My name is Mimi, or Mimi. I think there are many ways to say things. I'm an artist. I make work about things that are difficult to count and collect. So I focus on things like missing data, absences, those things that are difficult to reduce to our systems of metrified sense-making. I've made a lot of beautiful work, unbiased, I say that. But I'm not going to talk about it because I actually really do want to take seriously this question that we were given in the same spirit that you took it very seriously. This question of can technology transform systems of power within culture and its institutions? And I agree. It's a two-part question. And let me rewind a bit. I feel the reason I want to take it so seriously is because, number one, I work as an artist, so obviously I work in these fields. Number two, a lot of my work has to do with questions of power and of hierarchy. And number three, I'm also a technologist. I program. I've worked with code for a long time. So I feel very, very invested in the answer to this question, and it's one I think about all the time, which is why I can say so certainly that I also agree, two answers. Yeah, and also no. So I want to tell you why I think that, coming from a different perspective than some of the other people who have spoken today. As I said, I'm an artist. And to tell this, I'm going to tell it through some works that are in progress right now, some things that I'm working on. So to do that, I have to tell a little bit of a story. Please, bear with me. This is a map of Sugarland, Texas. This is the area that I mostly grew up in. It's my hometown, and you can see there's a little pink spot on the map. In 2018, the local school district whose school I attended, they were digging ground for a new school. And when they were digging, they found 95 bodies. And these were not just any bodies of 95 people. These are the bodies of 95 people who had died because of the practice of convict leasing, which was a violent 20th and 19th century practice by which Black folks and other undesirables were put into these forced labor systems, were first kind of convicted and charged on flimsy charges, and then made to do this kind of forced labor that brought money to the state. So when these bodies were found in my hometown, the reaction from people who were paying attention was shock and real surprise. People were like, well, how is this possible? This sleepy little town, how is it that this is the story? How could it be that this is what was in the ground that we were all walking on? And I felt the same way. But of course, we shouldn't have been surprised because there had been people who had been talking about it for a long time. There had been a team that had even gone to school district meetings and tried to tell them, say, don't dig ground here. There are bodies buried here. And those people had been dismissed. But then when they found the bodies and they found all these artifacts, it's like you couldn't dismiss that. And so for people who were listening, who were following the story, all of a sudden it became something that you had to deal with. And for me, I found this I found many things. But one of the things that really stood out to me was the fact that actually these people had been talking about it for a long time, but it wasn't until there was this kind of evidence that then something could be done, that it was like, oh, we can't just dismiss this. And I really was thinking about it because, number one, I was like, these kind of graves, I know they're not just in Sugarland. Sugarland just happens to be the kind of place where you dug and you could find them. So then how do you kind of take this conversation and expand it? How do you make it much larger? And how can you do that, knowing that you can't dig for remains everywhere? What is it that you can use? What can make people, what will people believe? What operates as a form of evidence that people trust? And the answer is technology, or specifically machine learning. So since 2019, this project I've been working on we've been creating, me and a team of statisticians and tons of other people helping us, we have been creating this machine learning model that can predict the likelihood that other counties in the US have mass graves similar to the one that was in my hometown. And this is an intense project. It's creative capital is supporting it, thank God, because it's been a lot of work. And there's a very deep research bent to this. The work that we are doing, the model we're creating, is statistically sound. I've told you I'm working with a team of statisticians to make sure of that. It will be reproducible, it will be auditable. However, it's very much an arts project. And I say that not just because the final output will, there will probably be some video, multi-channel video that will go in a museum or something like that. That's not why I say that. The reason why I say that it's an art project is that there are these impossibilities that are wrapped into it. There's this impossibility of being able to dig in any of the counties that we find. There's the impossibility of this kind of way of making sense of the world, attending to the grief and the pain and the violence that's in it. And then there's also this thing, which is that what we're doing is we're exploiting technology a little bit. We know that people trust machine learning. This is pre-Stable Diffusion, pre-ChatGPT. Been working on this since before then, but we know that people people afford a kind of trust and validity to these tools. And so in doing that, we can actually leverage it to get people to talk about a thing that otherwise they probably wouldn't want to talk about. So that's the yes of can technology transform these systems. And I don't even know if I'd say transform, and I don't know if I'd say that these systems of power, but what it can do is at least, Adam, what did you say? Give a gesture, kind of loosen a little bit, make it so that this thing, the very system that made it so that this system has prevailed for so long, or prevailed for the time it did, it can at least loosen and get at that a little bit. That's the yes. I also said there was a no. So to get at the no, can I ask, how many of y'all had heard of convict leasing before I said it today? Okay, and how many of y'all had heard about it learned about convict leasing in the past 5 years? Okay, so then actually, people who had heard of it before the past 5 years, tiny group. And I know, not everybody's from here, so I don't expect everybody to know, I know. But this is pretty consistent pretty much everywhere I go and talk about this. I told y'all, I've been working on this project since 2019. It has been extremely difficult to work on. The hard part has not been the technology. It hasn't been the code. The hard part hasn't been finding people to work on it. That's not it. The hard part has been the fact that this is a subject that for so long has not been talked about, that there have been what I like to call these structures that make it unknowable. And in my work, I think a lot about unknowable things that are unknowable not because they're not true, but because of how true they are, but because they kind of challenge something in a dominant structure. This is what the work has been. It's that when we're trying to even create the data sets, when we talk to people, sometimes the historians don't want to talk about this for their county because they don't want their county to be associated with this kind of history. Or because for so long, there wasn't that much incentive for the historians to do the work on this. So the kind of primary sources that we're pulling from are not very many. There are these interlocking social and cultural systems that make it so that it's hard to do this kind of work. And that thing, it being unknowable, that's the thing I think about this so much. Technology is so legible and profitable, and the tech sector makes trillions of dollars. There's a reason why all of us can be gathered here today to talk about technology. But that's not the hard thing. The hard thing is the illegible things. The hard thing is those things that don't show up. I think about how Caribbean theorist Triot talks about how power moves invisibly. Power makes things invisible, and that is the thing that's really hard. I'm speaking. So I want to just talk kind of really briefly. I told you I was working on a couple of projects. There's another piece I'm working on. It's called We Don't Talk About That. And it emerges from this work. It gets a little bigger. What I told you, I think about these structures of unknowability, the ways that there are things that make it so that we can't know things, know information, or know that which is true. And this isn't just when it comes to structural racism. This is all types of fields. I think about this from my own background too, as a Nigerian as well. And also in the sciences, I could go on. There are lots of examples of these things that become unknowable. And so what I'm trying to do for this piece is, I told you, legible things are easier to talk about. So we're trying to literally build this cyclical structure, me and this group of women, as part of a performance and a video, an installation. We're going to be building it, trying to make it legible, trying to make it physical, trying to materialize it so that there can be something to point to when we're doing this kind of work and we're trying to talk about those things that we can't talk about because the thing is blocking the thing being able to talk about it. That's art. That's using art to make that thing a thing. Okay, I'm actually going to stop there. We'll leave it at that. Pass it on. Thank you.